Meet Lenny. His passion is video games, and becoming a game developer is his biggest dream. Motivated by his passion, he signs up for coding classes to take the first step toward his dream. At first, he loved his coding classes, but over time he lost interest and his passion cooled. He attended his classes less and less, eventually stopping altogether. What happened to Lenny? He went from giving his all for his dream to giving up.
That's learned helplessness. Let's get into it.
To understand what happened to Lenny, let's first ride a time machine back to the 1960s. Meet American psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Maier. Seligman and Maier wanted to find out how people respond to stress when they feel like they have no control. So they did an interesting experiment with a few dogs, and they discovered something surprising. Seligman and Maier conducted an experiment where one group of dogs was placed in a cage and given mild electric shocks. These dogs had access to a lever that stopped the shocks, allowing them to learn they had control over their discomfort. The second group of dogs was then placed in a similar setup, but this time they had no lever to stop the shocks. Both groups were then placed in a crate divided into two sections, one with shocks and one without, separated by a low barrier. The dogs from the lever group quickly jumped over the barrier to escape the shocks, while the dogs from the no-lever group made no effort to escape. They simply endured the shocks, as if they'd accepted them as something they couldn't change.
From this experiment, Seligman and Maier moved on to experiment with people involving stressful stimuli.
And they found that repeated exposure to stress can make people passive, leading them to feel helpless to change their situation.
Seligman calls this learned helplessness.
And he defines it as a quitting response that follows from the belief that nothing you do ever matters. Just like the group of dogs in Seligman's experiment who didn't bother to jump over the barrier to escape the shocks, people who face repeated failures in pursuing their goals can eventually stop trying altogether. Over time, they begin to believe that nothing they do makes a difference, a mindset that can lead to a negative view of themselves and their abilities. Let's go back to Lenny. He was hopeful, determined, and ready to put in the work. He enrolled in coding classes as a first step to realizing his dream. However, he did not expect coding to be so hard. He fumbled in his first class and in every class after that. No matter how hard he tried, something always went wrong. The other kids, however, seemed to be doing okay. Lenny started to think, if the other kids can do it, why can't I? There must be something wrong with me. If I can't even figure out something so simple, how can I possibly become a game developer? Seeing himself through this negative lens, Lenny began equating each F with personal failure. The more he failed, the less he believed his actions could ever lead to success. Over time, Lenny increasingly felt unmotivated and disconnected from the dream that once excited him. Lost and overwhelmed, he saw no way to achieve his dream and eventually gave up. What we see from Lenny is what Seligman considers a pessimistic, explanatory style, the habitual way to view setbacks as personal, permanent, and pervasive. Because of his struggles in coding class, Lenny believed that he failed because he lacked the skills and not because the subject was difficult. In other words, he attributed his failure to a personal flaw instead of external factors. This pessimistic explanatory style can deepen helplessness, reinforcing the idea that the problem lies within and that no amount of effort can change it. Seligman explains that explanatory style plays a big role in how learned helplessness develops. When someone has a pessimistic explanatory style, they can feel like they are stuck in a cycle of repeated failures that they cannot escape. But an optimistic explanatory style allows people to see failures as temporary setbacks that can be overcome. With optimism, anyone can overcome and unlearn learned helplessness. Optimism can be trained by challenging one's own negative beliefs. Take Lenny, for example. After failing a coding test, he told himself, "I failed because I'm just not good at this." That belief made him feel helpless. So when the next test came, he expected the same outcome, stopped trying, and failed again. Over time, this reinforced the cycle. But what if Lenny challenged his belief? Instead of saying, "I failed because I wasn't good," he could reframe it. "I got an F, that test was hard, but that's okay. It means I need help or a different approach. From there, he could reach out to a teacher, a classmate, or even take more time to practice. And in doing that, he'd realize something powerful. His past failures don't define what comes next.
Seligman encourages people to look back at the negative experiences they faced in life,
like failing a test or a job interview, and examine the beliefs or inner dialogue that followed. Often, a negative belief leads to a negative emotion, but when we reframe those experiences, seeing them as temporary setbacks rather than personal flaws, we create space for optimism. And with that shift, learned helplessness can begin to turn into hopefulness.
Now that you know about learned helplessness, dive in and learn more. Here are great books that can build your knowledge on learned helplessness and how to overcome it. If this video was helpful, subscribe to our channel for more informative content about mental health.